from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, a major beef packer gets out of the feeder business in the U.S. Plus, the risk of wildfires on the rise in the Plains states. In agribusiness, so what now for grains?
But for the time being, increased production has overwhelmed that growth, and as a result, our carryout is building.
Checking seed-to-soil contact during planter setup on Farm Journal College TV, and the challenges of being healthy in rural America.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The shakeup continues at one of the world's largest packers as JBS continues to adjust its long-term business strategy by walking away from the cattle feeding sector. JBS USA announcing plans to sell 5 Rivers cattle feeding to Pinnacle Asset Management for approximately $200 million. 5 Rivers cattle feeding includes 11 feedlots and has a total feeding capacity estimated at 980,000 head. That makes it the largest cattle feeder in the world. Now, as part of the agreement, 5 Rivers will continue to supply cattle to JBS beef processing plants. Greg Henderson, editor of Drovers, joining us now from Kansas City. Greg, big picture, what does this mean for the industry?
I think the biggest impact for the industry in the sale of 5 Rivers is that they have 1 million cattle on feed, nearly 1 million cattle on feed. That means they buy roughly 5% of the nation's feeder cattle supply. A company that is buying 5 Rivers is obviously going to want to operate the business for profit. So in their best interest is not to have any disruption. Clinton, it's an operation that's going to continue to be operated pretty much the way that it was, and we don't see any disruption as far as feeder cattle prices or their activity in the market.
Now, Greg, what about the packing industry? It seems the big packers continue to step away from owning feeder cattle.
None of the major packers own cattle, which is really a further evolution of the vertical integration that we've seen in the industry. That's probably from a business standpoint, they see no reason to own the cattle because we now see more formula and contracts with packers. So it's just a further evolution of what we're already seeing taking place in the industry.
JBS bought 5 Rivers from Smithfield Foods, the world's biggest pork producer, in 2008. Smithfield telling Reuters this month it's now interested in getting back into the U.S. beef and poultry businesses. JBS leadership says this ends a flurry of global restructuring following a food safety scandal and inspection issues at beef processors in its own country, eventually snowballing into a government corruption scandal that reached all the way to the Brazilian presidency. The scandal included bribery and monetary favors brought to light by JBS Batista brothers, both in key leadership positions at the company at the time. Meanwhile, Cargill, which also recently sold its feeding operations, just signed a joint venture agreement with the largest North American producer of pea protein, stepping into the plant-based protein market. Now, according to Cargill, the agreement with purists is called a game changer in terms of taste and vertical integration in plant-based protein. The announcement comes just months after Cargill invested an undisclosed sum in Memphis Meats, a company that's developing beef, chicken, and duck protein from animal cells. Cargill joining other large meat companies investing in alternative protein sources. The first Rural Main Street Index of 2018 has a similar somber tone to all of last year. The farm economy continuing to struggle. Creighton University's RMI sank from December's weak reading and remains below growth neutral. In the 10-state region, which makes up the RMI, 40% of bankers surveyed say rising loan defaults will be the greatest economic challenge in 2018. Dr. Ernie Goss says he sees a glimmer of hope, saying the negatives are getting less negative. Now, as far as farmland goes, reviews are mixed. Some bankers say values are holding steady, while others continue to see a decline. Overall, the farmland price index remained below growth neutral for the 50th straight month. The brand new drought monitor map showing much of the high plains had some form of precipitation last week, but not very much overall in the region. East central Kansas had about an inch of precipitation, but dryness in the state and eastern Colorado continues to expand. Those drought conditions are fueling speculation that the wildfire season could be a repeat of last year in the plains. Kansas State University scientists are warning producers and fire managers that drought in the central and southern plains is causing a higher than normal risk of wildfire through April. Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas are all at an elevated risk. Those three states saw 1.5 million acres of ranch land get scorched by wildfires last year. A meteorologist at K-State says above normal moisture during the growing season produced more fuel, and with a dry down in recent months, those pastures and grazing lands are reaching a dangerous level for fire. Wind, always a big factor in fire risk. Let's get our wind forecast now from Mike Hoffman and today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. From agweb.com, we heard from a farmer in Greene County, Illinois. That's just north of St. Louis. He says they planted some cover crops late in October. They noticed recently that wheat and cereal rye have not sprouted. It's just lying in dry dirt. The local meteorologists say they're 14 inches behind in normal rainfall during the last half of 2017. The drought monitor shows half of Illinois is at some level of dryness. Greene County is in a moderate drought. And take a look at the wind speed forecast for today. You can see fairly breezy through the southern portions of the Great Lakes and the higher elevations out west. As we head through the day, then, that kind of continues in the same general areas. Heading to tomorrow, the stronger winds move into the eastern portions of the Great Lakes and other parts of the Northeast. Still the higher elevations of the Southwest, seeing some pretty good winds, especially tomorrow afternoon. I'll have my forecast coming up, but first, here's some hometown temps.
One dream, two prizes, 3 fields. Show us your farm and you could win a $10,000 donation for your community, plus a dream sports trip for you. To enter, visit powertodomore.com. Sponsored by Resicor Herbicide.
All right, when we come back, we'll go back to last week's USDA reports and investigate where grain markets go from here. And later, planning will be here before you know it. We've got tips to make sure you're ready to roll today on Farm Journal College TV. In Chicago, ag markets were mostly mixed. Let's get an update from Thursday's close from the CME.
We saw last Friday's USDA report really come out a little bit lackluster. We were looking for directional news on the back of new news, but weren't able to get that. And that's why we're seeing corn kind of retreat back into this range. 350 continues to be the magnet, and we continue to believe that there's going to be opportunity a couple cents on either side of that until we get a technical breakout or a breakdown. The bulls must defend 345 to 346 on a closing basis. A break and close below, I think, opens the door to some accelerated selling pressure towards 335. Now, on the soybean side of things, we're a little bit more optimistic, 971 1/4. If we're able to see a conviction close above this level, I wouldn't be surprised to see short covering from funds accelerate the momentum to the upside towards 984 to 986. That's what you should be looking at, too. This has been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Brian Bassing, Advanced Trading, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk. Brian, as we look at the latest USDA report, and we were just talking about how we didn't see the yield number that USDA came out with corn at 176. I mean, no one really thought, oh my gosh, we're going to blow through that top again, and here we are. But I guess the other side of that is there enough world demand to start to keep up with some of this supply that we're creating?
It's a great point, Clinton. With these lower prices that we've seen for corn and for soybeans and for wheat over the last 2-3 years, we've seen demand grow. So the old adage, low prices cure low prices, is being felt from the standpoint of increased consumption. But for the time being, increased production has overwhelmed that growth, and as a result, our carryout is building. But that's something that's flown under the radars, how strong our demand is. So if there is a worldwide hiccup, if you will, a worldwide issue with supply somewhere, whether it happens in South America or maybe in the former Soviet Union somewhere, sure, that stage is set for some volatility in the markets. Yeah,
were you surprised with USDA's number for demand for some of these grains?
No, I think that the soybean exports, for example, have been disappointing so far this year. So they did back off those exports for beans. I think there's still room for that number to come down a bit. So that's a little bit of a caution note there. And then the corn demand is good, it's solid, but it's not stellar. And as a result, we've seen, looking at that 2.5 billion bushel carryout domestically for corn.
Yeah, you know, and it is interesting with the increasing herd sizes that we've seen. We've seen more hogs, we've seen more cattle, we've seen more dairy cattle. Poultry's continues to rise. How that, I mean, there has to be some demand out there really kind of trying to chew through some of this supply.
Another great point, Clinton. We do have record numbers of grain-consuming animal units right now. Another point there to underscore low prices, curing low prices. Some of those sectors are healing up from what some damaging issues there several years ago now with corn and beans. But point being is that we do have a good demand base. And so anytime you have a hiccup or a surprise that would give the market a boost, it would probably be something that would give you an opportunity to sell that you may not see today.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll take a little bit of optimism there.
Yeah,
Thank you, Brian. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
To talk with Brian one-on-one, call Advanced Trading at 800-664-2314 or head online to advanced-trading.com. Ag Day, brought to you by Liberty Herbicide, the simply better solution for superior weed control and a stronger yield. One dream, two prizes, three fields. Show us your farm and you could win a $10,000 donation for your community, plus a dream sports trip for you. To enter, visit powertodomore.com. Sponsored by Resicor Herbicide.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here, looking at the drought monitor. And Mike, we do kind of continue to see things erode.
Yeah, kind of a concern, obviously. A lot more color on this map than there was a year ago, no doubt. And most of the concern is across the central and southern plains into the southeast and back into the southwest, as that entire area has gotten worse and worse overall. I mean, there's been ebbs and flows here and there. It has gotten a little bit better, Montana and the Dakotas, but you're still talking a moderate to severe drought in many parts of that area. Going back a month, you can see we were already getting pretty dry through Arkansas and some of the surrounding states. That area got better at one point, you can see 3 weeks ago, but then we've expanded the areas once again. So we just basically are concerned about the southern half of the country as we head toward this growing season, unless we get some pretty decent systems coming in. And actually we do have some pretty decent systems coming in out west. The next 2 or 3 weeks, instead of being a dry, cold pattern with air at the jet stream coming southward, it's moving from west to east, and there's going to be some pretty decent storm systems involved in that. A couple of them coming in out west right now with some valley rains and mountain snows. Very little going on east of the Continental Divide. A few showers in South Texas, a couple of snow showers in the northeast, and that's about it. Next storm system moving through southern Canada up that way, but then, like I said, the storm track kind of switches southward a little bit. High pressure is still on the chilly side in the southeast later on this afternoon. That eventually moves east, and with the southerly flow of air, everybody's going to warm up south of this frontal system. And in fact, even north of it, you're going to be near or a little bit above normal for temperatures for this time of the year. There's tomorrow morning some snow in the central Rockies. Next storm system showing up off the northwest coast, and as we head through the day tomorrow, we're going to start to see a few showers developing in the southerly flow coming off the Gulf of Mexico into the central and southern plain states. But as of late in the day tomorrow, not a lot of rain, as you can see. Precipitation estimate past 24 hours, all out west, adding in the next 36. A little bit in southeast Texas, a little bit through the northern tier of states, but most of it from the Continental Divide westward, and most of the snow is going to occur in that same area over the next 36 hours, as you can see there. Now, as far as the situation in the temperature category, you can see 30s and 40s for high temperatures this afternoon, most of the growing regions. Lows tonight, still very cold in the southeast, but it's warming up a little bit across the northern tier of states, and the same idea tomorrow. We're starting to see that return warm air into the southern plains, and that's all because the jet stream has switched around a little bit. Big storm coming from west to east there, as you can see, into early next week. Then that goes away, another ridge comes east, another big storm coming in out west by the end of next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Twin Falls, Idaho. First of all, cloudy with a bit of rain and snow, high temperature of 40 degrees. Checking out Grand Forks, North Dakota, mostly cloudy, rather mild actually, high around 40. And Montgomery, Alabama, good deal of sunshine on the chilly side, high just 46.
All right, we'll continue the planter conversation next on Farm Journal College TV, and later we'll check in on those New Year's resolutions while discussing rural health.
Ag Day, brought to you by Prosaro Fungicide from Bayer. The Farm Journal College Report is brought to you by Instinct and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers. They don't just stabilize nitrogen, they maximize it, so crops deliver the max in return. Learn more at maxinmaxout.com.
You know, mechanically, you can have the planter set up and running, but is it dropping seed correctly? Missy Bauer helps me investigate today on Farm Journal College TV. All right, Missy, now that we've found the seeds and kind of got them uncovered, what are you looking for here?
Well, the first thing I always want to check is going to be planting depth. That's still going to be my most important thing. So I like to do that a couple different ways, because I uncover my seeds basically from digging from the top down here like we've shown, and I want to lay something flat across here.
Okay.
Uniform or even with where my gauge wheels have run.
Okay.
And then just get an overall measurement. So here I'm right at about 2 inches deep from the bottom of here to the seed.
Right.
Over in this row is a little bit deeper because we're just trying to decide really where we need to be. I'm closer to 2 1/4 inches over there.
And this is our shallow row?
Yeah, and this is the shallow one, just as an example, you know, what we'd be looking at. But if I go ahead and lay something flat across here down to where my seed is, I'm closer to that 1.5 inch
right.
mark. So when I'm trying to decide where should I really be planting at, as a rule of thumb, we like to be somewhere between 1 3/4 inches and 2 inches.
Okay.
But we've got a couple things we got to be cautious of. One, I got to still make sure I have moisture. So if I'm at 2 inches and I don't have enough moisture, then maybe I'm going 2 1/4.
Okay.
If it's early in the spring and it's really, really cold out, then I might get closer to that 1 3/4 inches at the shallowest, maybe a little bit less than that.
Right.
You know, no less than 1.5 inches ever.
Right, and because you worry as this planter's going across the field of it not staying, I mean, there's going to be some float.
Exactly. I always call it floaters. You're always going to have a little bit of variability as it's going through here. And if I start off at 1.5 inches and I get a 1/4 inch floater, now I got a seed at 1 1/4 inches.
Right.
Which is definitely going to be way too shallow. If I'm over here at 2 inches like I am here and I have a 1/4 inch floater, I'm still at 1 3/4 inches. That seed's still going to have a great chance of producing a good solid ear for us.
When we come back, connecting chore time to CrossFit. I'll explain next.
AgDay, brought to you by Corvus, the #1 pre-emergence corn herbicide. In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit Kubota.com today.
We're a couple of weeks into the new year, and that begs the question, are you sticking with those New Year resolutions? One of the most popular is eating healthy and exercising more, which you can see by the surge in vehicles at the local gym. Problem is, local gyms are few and far between in rural America. I'm not sure it's the only reason, but it may be a contributing factor as to why rural populations are overall less healthy than our big city brethren. Now, according to numerous studies cited by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, rural communities have higher rates of chronic illness and poor overall health when compared to urban populations. 4 of the 5 leading causes of death in rural areas are associated with chronic disease like heart disease and diabetes. And in every case, the numbers are higher than in metro areas. Life expectancies are 2 years shorter. Vehicle and suicide deaths are higher. Rural residents are more likely to be smokers, are less likely to maintain a normal body weight, get enough exercise, and they sleep less than their urban peers. This new map from USDA shows that deaths, in blue, now outpace births in half of the nation's rural counties. So what do you do about it? You know, mixing in a workout after a day of physical labor doesn't always sound inviting, but hey, maybe we just need a few tweaks. City folks, well, they're getting fit on stuff we already do. Lifting tractor tires, swinging ropes, deadlifting sacks of sand and feed, jumping on and off of stuff. They call it CrossFit. We call it work. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe we just need to change our mindset. Hey, honey, I'm headed out to do CrossFit, not, hey, I'm headed out to do the chores. Think about it and be sure to stick with that New Year's resolution. Your health and millions of hungry people may depend on it. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, started your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day in farm country.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.